Now, whether you're a roulette enthusiast or just someone who wants to know more about the game, or possibly some dude asking himself why YouTube threw this video into their suggestion box, we're gonna throw you some interesting, weird, crazy, mind-blowing roulette facts that you're just not gonna believe. So get comfortable, because here they come. Number 1. In the 1600s, there was a French mathematician named Blaise Pascal, which, I'm gonna stop you right there. Blaise Pascal, that's the coolest name ever, Blaise. All right, I wanna name like all my kids Blaise. It'll be confusing, but I think they'll forgive me because their name will be so badass. Well, anyway, Blaise was working on a mechanical calculator with the aim of making simple monetary calculations to help his father, who was a tax collector, which is like the most boring job ever. Anyway, you see, at the time in France, the currency was the livre, which is based on factors of 20 and 12 rather than 100, like, every other country in the world. And this made the task of calculating these odd units of currency very difficult. So he came up with this so-called Pascaline calculator, which essentially was a hefty mechanical computer mainly composed of 8 movable dials that when you arrange them in a certain order, it would actually compute a solution for you. The Pascaline started production in 1642, but the machine wasn't very successful, so actually manufacturing stopped after 10 years. It only lasted those 10 years because the device was incredibly expensive, and in 1642, most people were illiterate, let alone mathematically literate. So I can understand why something like that would be considered kind of a toy. Well, anyway, Pascal, however, continued working on his designs, and this led to his idea of creating a perpetual motion machine, meaning a hypothetical machine that could work indefinitely without any discernible source of energy. Now, for the record, modern laws of thermodynamics regard this to be an absolute impossibility. A perpetual motion machine cannot exist. In any case, though, the Pascaline came to be what influenced the creation of what we would later be known today as the roulette wheel, which in French literally means little wheel. The game itself, though, originates in France, as I said earlier, and is the combination of this 18th century wheel mechanism inspired directly by the 17th century Pascaline wheel, an Italian-French game called Biribi, which is like this number-based lottery-style game. Overall, we owe it to Blaise for introducing us to the world of spinning wheels. Number 2. Would you believe me if I told you that a roulette scam was one of the reasons for the fall of the Spanish government and the eventual Civil War of 1936? Well, you better, because that's the truth. Because in 1934, the Interior Minister of Spain, a man by the name of Rafael Salazar Alonso, and a few more high-ranking, sinister ministers were bribed with a gold watch and the equivalent of about 45,000 US dollars to today's currency in order to legalize a fixed roulette wheel that was called the straperlo. The name actually originates from the surnames of its creators, but that's something for a different time. Anyway, long story short, Salazar Alonso wasn't happy with his bribe. And after failing to get any more of that dirty bribe money, he decided to organize a raid on the Grand Casino Corsal, which put this whole fixed roulette fraud into motion in the first place. To avenge the fact, the inventors of the fixed roulette started leaking documents about the whole affair to all the other high-ups in the government. So after all that vicious backstabbing and blackmail, LaRue's radical Republican Party lost all of its credibility. And this opened things up for the left-wing Popular Front Party to replace them when they were voted into government. Now, in July 1936, though, all hell broke loose when Franco's Nationalist Party overthrew the government, throwing the entire country of Spain into this era of fascist-like regimes. Well, we know how things went after that. Well, at least we do if we graduated from any high school European history course. But it's hard exactly to point fingers in this story. It's pretty safe to say this is probably the biggest political event in history, though, which involves a roulette wheel. Number 3. Did you know that in California, any gambling game which has an outcome determined by a ball or dice is absolutely illegal? You didn't? Well, now you do. So the question, though, is, does this make roulette technically illegal in California? The answer? Yes, it does. But casinos, luckily, have found a way around that. And they have instead come up with a game they call California Roulette. Such an original name. Such an original name. So essentially, it's the exact same game as roulette, but instead of spinning a roulette wheel and having a ball fall into a pocket to determine who the winner is, you use a deck of cards. You draw a card. It's essentially, there's a very specific deck of similar color and suits as regular decks, but instead this deck only has 38 cards and a few other modifications to make the outcomes the same as those you would find at the roulette table. The dealer proceeds to use an automatic card shuffler, and out of this automatic card shuffler, a single card is dealt to determine the winner and the color of the particular number. The reason why ball and dice gambling is illegal in the California state is a bit sketchy and not entirely convincing. They say it has something to do with the difference between chance and skill, but for some reason, the authorities found the card version of roulette to be a passable variation on the game. In the end, it's a pretty simple solution, but quite effective, and it has allowed us to keep the game alive and well in the Gold State. As a side note, Arizona had a similar issue, and they decided to adapt this California roulette into their casinos as well. Number 4, we saved the best for last, guys, because this one's a doozy. During the 1960s and 1970s, a German-born American physician by the name of Richard Recke spent his time setting tens of thousands of roulette spins at various casinos to catch any wear and tear or production flaws that would make each wheel more biased towards certain numbers rather than others. He got good at it, and I mean real good at it. He got so good at it that he could easily spot these flaws immediately. And he went on to win $1.2 million after cracking some wheels across multiple European casinos. He targeted the European casinos as they had 37 numbers instead of 38, making it slightly easier to win. And the casinos in Europe were less likely to stop players who were on this big winning streak. Well, anyway, after rampaging across the European casinos, Richard eventually raised their suspicions, and the casino operators started replacing and fixing their machines more often. He was called a menace to every casino in Europe by one casino manager, and it actually was banned by several others. However, he eventually decided to return to the US with his $1.2 million in ill-gotten gains, and he pretty much lived happily ever after, as one would do if one had earned $1.2 million easily by observing thousands of spins of roulette wheels. Number 5. You want a quick tip that will immediately increase your chances of winning? Well, just find a table with only 1 0. Does that even exist? It does. That's right. There exists 2 versions of roulette. There's the American version, which most of our viewers are probably familiar with, and then there is a French European version. The American one has 2 numbers that favor the house, those being 0 and 00. And the European one only has a single 0 slot. This means statistically, when you sit at a European roulette table, the house edge has dropped 50% from 2.7% to 1.3% overall. So I hope you enjoyed those weird, wacky, crazy, and hopefully interesting roulette facts. Are there some we didn't mention that deserve to be on this list? Go ahead and drop them in that nice little comment section down below. But don't forget to clickety-clack that like button, slam that subscribe button, and ring-a-ding-ding that notification bell. And make sweet, sweet love to that notification share button. My name's Dominic. This has been the All-American Casino Guide, reminding you, play responsibly.